If someone had approached me at 21 or 22 and told me that I would one day reach millionaire status by the age of 31, I would have politely smiled but never believed them. Not because I lacked ambition, I always had big dreams, but because the reality of my financial situation back then painted a completely different picture. I was earning a genuinely low salary, the kind that forces you to calculate every grocery purchase and pray you don't run into unexpected expenses. Nothing about where I started hinted at financial greatness. Like many young adults, I stepped into the financial world excited but unprepared. And because nobody in my upbringing talked about money, investing, or the long-term effects of financial decisions, I made mistakes that set me back years. I bought cars I should not have bought. I convinced myself I needed to look successful long before I was successful. I purchased a home before I had the means, the discipline, or the understanding to manage such a responsibility. Those choices created financial pressure that followed me everywhere into my career, my relationships, and even my self-esteem. To make this story relatable, no matter where you're watching from, when I say millionaire, I'm referring to 1 million South African Rand, which converts to around $55,500 USD at the current exchange rate. Depending on your country, that number can feel big or small. For context, it's roughly a third of the average American net worth, which hovers above $180,000. But for me, coming from a working class background, starting on a very low salary, and making financial mistakes early in my adulthood, becoming a Rand millionaire was an achievement that symbolized something much bigger than the number itself. It represented growth, discipline, and the results of decisions that I once thought were too small to matter. In this video, I want to walk you through the 4 foundational strategies that helped me reach this milestone. These aren't complicated investment formulas or get-rich-quick tricks. They're simple, clear actions that absolutely anyone can start implementing, whether you're a student trying to stretch a bursary, unemployed and hoping for change, or working a regular 9-to-5 job and trying to build a life of financial stability and freedom. My name is Peter, and on this channel we break down personal finance in a way that is honest, understandable, and practical. Every lesson I share comes from real life, from books, mentors, YouTube videos, and trial and error experiences that shape the way I manage money today. As we walk through this journey, I'll share small pieces of my story, the frustrations I faced, and the mindsets I had to outgrow. So please don't skip ahead. Every part builds on the last, and you might miss the one thing that changes everything for you. Before we dive in, please hit the like button if you're watching this. It costs nothing, but it truly supports this channel and helps others find the financial clarity they've been searching for. Let's begin. 1. The moment everything clicked. One of the biggest turning points in my financial journey didn't happen during a promotion, a side hustle breakthrough, or some dramatic moment of luck. It happened when I finally understood how employer-matched retirement contributions worked. For years, I had been hearing people casually mention RIA contributions or pension matching, but the information always felt disconnected from my reality. I assumed it was something older people cared about or something only people earning high salaries could benefit from. But the day it clicked, everything changed. I realized that my employer wasn't just paying me a salary. They were also quietly offering me free money that could grow, multiply, compound, and build wealth even while I slept. Once that realization sank in, I promised myself I would maximize it. 2. What employer match really means and why it matters. Let me break this down exactly how it shifted for me. In many companies, when you contribute a certain percentage of your salary to your retirement fund, your employer matches the contribution. That means if you put in 5%, they add another 5%, effectively doubling your contribution without you paying a cent more. I worked for companies that offered this structure. 5% from me, 5% from them. The moment I understood this, I knew I was leaving money on the table. Real money, not imaginary investment numbers, actual contributions being added to my future by someone else. And because retirement contributions come from your gross salary, you get tax benefits that lower your taxable income. In simple terms, you save for your future and keep more of your money legally. The system truly works for you, but only if you use it. 3. how I became aggressive with my contributions. Once I realized the power of this system, I made a bold decision. If my employer was willing to match my contribution, then I needed to contribute as much as I could reasonably sustain. So I began contributing between 15% and 20% of my income, and that total included the employer's match. It wasn't always comfortable. Some months felt tighter than others, but I kept reminding myself that money placed into a retirement annuity is money I wouldn't be tempted to touch, spend, or waste. Remember, in South Africa, you can contribute up to 27.5% of your annual income, capped, and still reap tax benefits. So I leaned into that system fully, where, at my lowest point in early employment, my contributions were around R1 200. At my highest, I was putting in over R16,000 monthly. It sounded insane to people around me. But here's what I understood they didn't. Money that you never see in your bank account cannot be spent. Money that grows untouched becomes wealth. And for someone like me, young, inexperienced, coming from a working class background, I needed a system that protected me from myself. My RO became that system. 4. Why my retirement annuity was the core of my wealth. A lot of people think their wealth will come from a business, a lucky break, or some high-risk investment. But for me, the simple truth is this. Most of my early wealth sat inside my retirement annuity. Not because I was making huge salaries, I wasn't. Not because I was investing perfectly, I wasn't. But because I was consistent, disciplined, and determined to never leave free money unclaimed. The retirement annuity forced long-term thinking, commitment, savings discipline, financial protection, tax optimization. And because the money was locked away until retirement, I couldn't sabotage my progress. That lock-in felt restrictive at first, but over time I realized it protected me from short-term decisions that could have derailed my financial growth. 5. A small decision with massive long-term impact. If I could summarize why this step mattered so much, it would be this. Employer match gave me a head start that my salary alone could never provide. Even small contributions grew into something meaningful. Even during financial mistakes, that RA quietly built wealth. Even when I felt stuck, the contributions continued working behind the scenes. It didn't require genius. It didn't require huge income. It just required consistency. Before we move to the next strategy, I want you to genuinely evaluate your own situation. Are you contributing to your employer match? Are you maximizing it? Do you know what percentage your company matches? If not, ask your HR department. Do this for yourself, not next month, not next year, this week. And if your retirement savings have reached $15,000, $30,000, or even $100,000, hit the like button and comment below. Your progress deserves to be celebrated. Why earning more, not cutting more, changed everything. The second major shift in my wealth journey came from understanding something that completely changed how I approached money: the opportunity gap. Your opportunity gap is the financial breathing space between what you earn and what you spend. It is the space where wealth is born. If your income is R10,000 and your expenses are R9,900, your opportunity gap is almost zero. If your income is R15,000 and your expenses are R14,500, your gap is too small to create real change. But if your income grows while your expenses stay stable, that difference, no matter how small, becomes the fuel that builds savings, investments, and security. Most people try to widen this gap by cutting expenses. And while cutting back can help, it wasn't an option for me. Why I couldn't cut my expenses any further? By the time I realized I needed to change my finances, I was already financially stretched thin. I had a car I shouldn't have bought, a house I wasn't ready for, debt that weighed on every decision, monthly bills I could not escape. My expense base was already heavy because I made decisions based on pressure, comparison, and the desire to look like I had my life together. I wasn't buying luxury, I was buying identity, and that identity was expensive. So when people say, just cut your expenses, I smile because I remember that season clearly. I had nothing left to cut. I was already denying myself luxuries. I was already budgeting tightly. I was already stretching every rand. So I had to change my approach. The realization that changed everything. One day it finally clicked for me. If I couldn't shrink my expenses, I had to expand my income. It felt overwhelming at first. I didn't know where to begin. I was exhausted from my full-time job, and I felt like I didn't have any skill worth monetizing. But here's the truth many people don't realize. You don't need a revolutionary idea to earn extra money. You only need a skill someone else needs, even if it seems small or ordinary to you. And with that mindset shift, everything changed. How I created multiple small income streams. I didn't start a big business. I didn't invest thousands into a new venture. I didn't try to reinvent the wheel. I started with what I had. Tutoring. I had knowledge. I knew certain subjects. People needed help. I charged what I could, and it added up. Consulting. I had experience in certain professional areas. I realized companies and individuals were willing to pay for clarity, guidance, and problem solving. Even small consulting jobs created meaningful income. Miscellaneous small projects. Anything that felt honest, possible, and legal I did. No job was beneath me. No amount was too small. Because every rand I earned widened my opportunity gap. What shocked me was how quickly these small streams began creating real momentum. My side income wasn't glamorous, but it was meaningful. How side income transformed my financial life. Every extra rand had a purpose. I paid off my car faster. I reduced my debt significantly. I made extra payments toward my first apartment. I stopped feeling suffocated every month. I created financial breathing room. I started saving without stress. I finally had margin to invest. And this is the part many people miss. Wealth grows faster when the pressure on your salary decreases. When your entire life depends on one paycheck, every financial decision becomes emotional and reactive. But when you build even one small additional stream of income, everything becomes lighter. Your salary goes toward living. Your side income goes toward growth. That simple shift accelerated my journey more than I ever expected. Not because hustle culture is fashionable, but because having one source of income puts your entire life at risk. A side hustle widens your opportunity gap, reduces financial stress, allows you to invest sooner, helps you pay off debt without drowning, builds a confidence, teaches discipline, brings stability in uncertain times. The key isn't starting something big. The key is starting something possible. Start with what you know. Start with what you enjoy. Start with what people ask you for help with. Start with what feels realistic. Small streams eventually form rivers. If you're watching this video and you feel financially trapped, if your expenses swallow your salary every month, if you can't find anything else to cut, please consider increasing your opportunity gap by expanding your income. It may feel slow. It may feel pointless at first. It may feel like the amounts are too small to matter. But those small amounts changed my life. And they can change yours too. If you haven't watched my videos on side hustles, please check them out after this one. They're practical, realistic, and tested. And if you need help figuring out which side hustle suits you, leave a comment. I always respond. Playing the game, how I turned my financial mess into investments. One of the biggest surprises in my financial journey is that my first real investment wasn't the result of wisdom. It was the result of a mistake. Remember that house I bought long before I was financially ready? At first, it felt like a burden I would be paying for emotionally and financially for years. It stretched my budget. It created pressure. It became a monthly reminder of how trying to look grown up can push you into decisions you're not prepared for. But instead of letting that mistake drown me, I eventually learned to reposition it. I moved out. I rented it out. And the rental income began covering most of the mortgage. Suddenly, that burden became a quiet investment, one that grew without demanding as much from me as it once did. This moment became a powerful lesson. Not every mistake should be abandoned. Some need to be realigned. Some need to be repurposed. Some are simply investments hiding in disguise. 2. reducing my expenses by moving a strategic reset. After moving out of the house, I relocated to another apartment under a rent-to-buy arrangement. It didn't work out the way I initially hoped it would, but the living costs were significantly lower, and that one shift reduced my monthly financial pressure more than I expected. Lower living expenses meant more money freed up, less stress, more breathing room, more ability to focus on investing. The timing worked in my favor too. Interest rates were good, rental income was stable, and the house almost broke even on its own. Aside from occasional maintenance issues, which thankfully it didn't happen often, the property largely sustained itself. For the first time, I wasn't losing money every month. I was finally holding steady. 3. Beginning my investment journey. One small step at a time. A lot of people think investments begin with big sums of money. Mine didn't. Alongside the property, I opened a tax-free savings account and began investing in ETFs, exchange-traded funds. My strategy wasn't fancy, complicated, or overly technical. It was simple. Contribute every year. Max out what I can. Let time do the work. And that's exactly what I did. Even while contributing aggressively to my retirement fund, I still made the decision to fully utilize my tax-free savings allowance each year. And because ETFs are naturally diversified, I didn't need to become an expert at picking individual stocks. The investment grew steadily, quietly, and predictably. 4. Expanding into property and REITs, building layers of wealth. As my confidence grew and my understanding deepened, I began expanding my investments. I didn't rush into buying more physical properties that required far more capital and risk. Instead, I increased my exposure through REITs, real estate investment trusts. This allowed me to invest in property without needing huge deposits, managing tenants, fixing broken pipes, stressing about vacancies. It was a way to benefit from the property market without the headaches of being a full-time landlord. Over time, I also shifted some of my investments to platforms that offered better diversification and stronger property exposure platforms that I talk about in more detail in other videos. Every investment added another layer of stability to my financial life. 5. Before I could invest properly, I had to clean up my financial mess. But let me be honest, I couldn't invest properly until I confronted my financial mistakes. I had a telecom account that needed to be closed, an FNB credit card draining my income, clothing accounts I opened without discipline, monthly payments that kept me stuck. So I made a decision. My side income would go toward clearing debt first while I continued investing in small amounts. People often ask, should I pay off debt before I invest? My answer remains the same. I did both. Not because it was easy, not because I had lots of money, but because waiting until my debt was gone would have delayed my investment journey by years. So I paid down debt slowly, built my tax-free savings, contributed to my RA, kept a small emergency fund, and invested modestly, all at the same time. Consistency mattered more than perfection. How investing changed my financial trajectory, even in chaotic seasons. Here's something most people underestimate. You don't need perfect conditions to start investing. You just need to start. There were months when life felt chaotic. There were months when debt screamed louder than progress. There were months when the balance hardly moved. But the act of investing, even tiny amounts, taught me something powerful. It taught me patience. It taught me discipline. It taught me long-term thinking. It taught me that wealth is not built emotionally. It's built methodically. Even when I felt financially messy, those investments kept growing. They didn't judge me. They didn't rely on perfection. They didn't need me to be brilliant. They just needed time. When I look back at everything I did, this step stands out. My wealth didn't grow because I invested big. It grew because I invested consistently. Investing turned my life around. It reduced my reliance on my salary. It lowered my stress. It created long-term stability. It opened doors to financial freedom. It made me feel confident, even during hard months. And it all started with tiny contributions, a repurposed mistake, and a willingness to begin before I was ready. The Hopscotch strategy, How strategic job moves multiplied my income. When people hear the phrase changing jobs, they often imagine instability, impatience, or a lack of loyalty. But for me, changing jobs wasn't about chasing titles. It was about survival and growth. I didn't grow up with financial cushions. I didn't have an emergency fund waiting to save me. I didn't come from a background where wealth was passed down. Every increase in earnings mattered. Every raise mattered. Every improvement in my take-home pay changed something real in my life. So when I discovered research showing that staying at a company for more than 2 years could mean earning up to 50% less than your peers who move strategically, it stopped me in my tracks. I realized that loyalty without financial progression was quietly costing me years of potential growth. And I couldn't afford that. People assume I changed jobs casually, but every transition I made was intentional, researched, and tied to a bigger strategy. I asked myself, will this job pay me enough to widen my opportunity gap? Will it increase my retirement contributions? Will it allow me to invest more consistently? Will it give me skills that make me more valuable in the future? Will it move me closer to financial freedom? If the answer wasn't yes, I didn't move. I wasn't chasing glamour. I wasn't trying to impress anyone with job titles. I was chasing leverage. Leverage is the unseen force behind wealth. It's the difference between staying financially stagnant and accelerating into a new bracket of opportunity. Each job move gave me a bump in income, a shift in benefits, new experience, better negotiating power, and the confidence to ask for what I deserved. Slowly, the stability I once wished for started to build around me, not because my salary magically exploded, but because I moved with intention. When I say I started with a very low salary, I mean low. My first job paid me $250 per month. It was barely enough to survive, let alone build a financial future. And at that salary, I wasn't even contributing to retirement. I simply couldn't. But each job move brought small increases. $250 became $500. $500 became $850. $850 grew to $1,500. Then $2,000. Then $3,000. Then $4,000. Until eventually I was earning close to $6,000 per month by the age of 31. None of these jumps happened overnight. But because they were intentional and aligned with my financial goals, the impact was massive. Every increase in income gave me more room to build the life I wanted. And more income, bigger retirement contributions. The more I earned, the more I could put toward my retirement annuity. And the more the company matched, which multiplied my wealth quietly in the background. More income, stronger emergency fund. For the first time, I didn't fear unexpected expenses. I had savings. I had stability. I had options. More income, more disciplined investing. Investing became consistent rather than occasional. Small amounts grew into bigger contributions. I could buy ETFs, maximize tax-free savings, and strengthen my portfolio. More income, more debt freedom. I paid down long-standing debt. I closed accounts that drained my money. I removed financial leaks that slowed me down for years. And when you add side income from tutoring and consulting on top of these salary jumps, the compounding effect is undeniable. Let's be honest. The workplace is changing. The world is moving fast. Staying in one position hoping for a miracle raise isn't realistic anymore. Strategic job hopping works because new employers value fresh talent. Companies pay more to fill skill gaps. Your market value increases with each role. Experience compounds. Confidence grows. Negotiation power becomes stronger. I wasn't moving recklessly. I was moving strategically every time. And every move pushed me closer to financial independence. If you're watching this and you feel stuck in a job that isn't paying enough, if you feel overlooked, undervalued, or financially stagnant, please know this. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to grow. You are allowed to move toward opportunities that honor your worth. Loyalty is admirable. But loyalty that keeps you financially trapped is not stability. It's silent suffocation. You don't need to jump every year. You don't need to move recklessly. But you do need to understand that your job is a tool, not your identity. When used correctly, it can elevate your income in ways that transform your entire financial future. When I reflect on everything I did to reach millionaire status by 31, this is one of the strategies that stands out the most. Warned, because employer match grows your savings, investing compounds your money, side hustles widen your gap, budgeting keeps your spending in check, but a salary increase that accelerates every single one of these. Changing jobs gave me the leverage to save more, invest more, contribute more, build wealth faster, eliminate debt quicker, create long-term security. It changed my financial trajectory forever. The three habits that kept me grounded and consistent. After walking through all the practical strategies, employer matching, widening my opportunity gap, repurposing my mistakes into investments, and making strategic job moves, you might think the journey was purely mechanical. But it wasn't. The truth is, techniques help me build wealth, but habits help me keep it. My progress wasn't rooted only in financial tactics. It was rooted in daily decisions, inner discipline, spiritual grounding, and clarity about who I was and what I wanted. These next three habits didn't just guide my finances. They stabilized my mindset, shaped my discipline, and protected me from falling back into old patterns. Let's go deeper. 1. Praying over my paycheck, finding clarity and direction. I didn't grow up with wealth. I didn't grow up hearing conversations about retirement, investments, tax benefits, compound interest, or financial planning. I grew up watching people stretch money as far as it could go. I grew up seeing stress around finances. I grew up in a working-class family where the goal was survival, not wealth building. So when I entered adulthood and began earning money, I didn't have a blueprint. I didn't have a framework. I didn't have guidance. My financial decisions were driven by emotions, fear, comparison, pressure, and the desire to look okay. And because of this, my early decisions lacked wisdom. That's why praying over my finances became so important. It wasn't a ritual, it was a necessity. For me, prayer wasn't about asking for money to fall from the sky. It was about asking for wisdom, self-control, discernment, clarity, patience, protection from impulsive decisions. Money amplifies who we are. If you're careless, money magnifies that. If you panic spend, money intensifies that pattern. If you follow trends blindly, money makes the mistakes bigger. Prayer grounded me. It reminded me to pause and think. It softened the emotional noise that often leads to poor decisions. Every paycheck became an opportunity to reflect. Where should this money go? What deserves my attention? What is unnecessary? What aligns with my goals? What should I avoid? This habit didn't just guide my finances, it guided my character. Prayer helped me stay consistent during seasons of frustration, not compare myself to friends or colleagues, resist lifestyle creep, avoid unnecessary purchases, make decisions slowly and intentionally, protect my peace, trust the process. There were months when I felt stuck, months when debt felt suffocating, months when investing felt pointless. But because I prayed over my journey, I stayed committed even when results were slow. Wealth requires patience, and patience requires grounding. 2. Using a budget, the tool that kept me accountable and aware. By the age of 25, I realized something. It's impossible to win with money if you don't know where your money is going. I needed a system that showed me what I earned, what I owed, what I saved, what I invested, what I wasted, what needed to change. Without a budget, money disappears quietly. You think you know where it's going until you track it. So I created a budgeting template and used it religiously. Not for a month, not for a year, but for years. Before budgeting, I felt like money controlled me. I felt confused. I felt overwhelmed. I felt guilty after spending. I reacted instead of planning. After budgeting, I finally had clarity. I could predict financial stress before it arrived. I saw my spending habits clearly. I could adjust quickly. I took control of my money. I noticed patterns I never saw before. Budgeting wasn't about restriction. It was about awareness. And awareness brings freedom. Even as my income increased, I never abandoned budgeting. A bigger salary doesn't mean better discipline. A bigger salary doesn't erase bad habits. A bigger salary doesn't magically build wealth. My budgeting tool became my compass, my reality check, my financial mirror, my accountability partner. If you want the same budgeting template, comment budget below, I'll send it. 3. Staying true to myself, the habit that saved my future. One of the most painful lessons I learned is this. You can lose yourself financially trying to keep up with people who aren't thinking about you. I bought things because others bought them. Society expected it. I didn't want to look behind. I wanted to fit in. I wanted validation. But performing for others is expensive. Trying to match someone else's lifestyle? That's a full-time job and an unpaid one. Comparison is subtle. It whispers. You should be further. You should have that by now. Everyone your age is doing this. You look like you're behind. But comparison leads to unnecessary upgrades, impulse purchases, debt, stress, poor decisions, ignoring your reality. When I realized this, I made a decision. I would no longer finance other people's dreams with my money. To stay true to myself, I asked, what kind of life do I want? What habits make me happy? What goals matter to me? What do I value? What is worth my money and what isn't? When I answered honestly, everything changed. I stopped chasing validation. I stopped trying to impress people who didn't contribute to my life. I stopped feeling guilty for choosing simplicity. I stopped measuring my journey with someone else's timeline. Staying true to myself didn't just save my money, it saved my peace. These 3 habits shaped my financial character. Praying gave me clarity. Budgeting gave me control. Staying true to myself gave me freedom. Without these habits, the strategies I shared earlier would have fallen apart. Wealth is built by decisions, but protected by habits. As we come to the end of this video, I want to pause for a moment and speak to you directly, not from a place of expertise, not from a place of numbers or formulas, but from lived experience. When I look back on my journey to becoming a millionaire by 31, what strikes me the most is not the money itself. It's not the exact contributions I made to my retirement. It's not the job titles I held or the side hustles I did. It's not even the investments that grew quietly in the background. What strikes me most is how ordinary everything felt in the moment. There were no fireworks. There was no dramatic turning point. There were no sudden breakthroughs. There was no perfect financial season. It was slow. It was steady. It was repetitive. It was sometimes frustrating. It was often lonely. It was deeply personal. But it was consistent. And consistency, even when life feels messy, is what builds everything you see today. I didn't start with much, that is the truth. I didn't have the knowledge I have now. I didn't have support. I didn't have confidence. I didn't have clarity. But I had enough humility to learn, enough courage to start, enough discipline to keep going, and enough faith to believe that my financial story could be rewritten. And so can yours. Your journey will not look like mine, and that's okay. I want you to understand something very important. Maybe you earn more than I did. Maybe you earn less. Maybe you're younger. Maybe you're older. Maybe you have dependents. Maybe you're on your own. Maybe you're drowning in debt. Maybe you're starting fresh. Maybe you feel stuck. Maybe you feel inspired. Wherever you are, it's valid. There is no timeline you must follow, and nay, no age where you should have reached a milestone. No rule that says you must be wealthy by 30, 40, or 50. What matters is that you begin. Your journey is not late. Your progress is not slow. Your story is not over. Your future is not decided by your past mistakes. Your financial identity can change the moment you decide it will. If there's one thing you take from this video, let it be this. You do not need the perfect circumstances to build wealth. You just need the willingness to start where you are. Let me leave you with a simple summary, not of the steps, but of the spirit behind them. Leverage what you already have. Use your employer match. Take advantage of benefits that already exist. Increase your opportunity gap, not by shrinking your life, but by expanding your income. Turn mistakes into stepping stones. A bad financial decision doesn't have to end your journey. Sometimes it becomes your first investment. Make strategic career moves. Your salary is a powerful tool. Use it to strengthen every part of your financial life. Build habits that anchor your character. Pray over your decisions. Budget with awareness. Stay true to yourself. The truth is, building wealth is far more emotional than mathematical. Once your mind shifts, your money follows. If you're watching this and feeling overwhelmed, if you're thinking, I've made too many mistakes, if you're whispering, it's too late for me, I want to tell you something I wish someone told me. You are not behind. You are not disqualified. You are not too late. You are simply beginning. Wealth is not built in one giant leap. It's built in quiet decisions, small changes, daily habits, and long-term faithfulness. All you need to do is start with the next right step. 5. A gentle call to action. Soft, human, genuine. If this video spoke to you, if it opened your eyes, if it brought clarity, if it gave you hope, please hit the like button. It helps the channel, but more importantly, it helps this message reach someone else who may be struggling silently. Comment below and tell me, what part of this journey resonated with you the most? If you want the budgeting template I mentioned, simply comment budget. And if you're new here or haven't yet subscribed, please join the community. It doesn't cost anything, but it supports me more than you know, and it ensures you never miss the videos that can transform your financial life. Thank you truly for spending this time with me. If you enjoyed this video, you might like some of the other content on the channel. I'll link them on the screen. I'll see you there, or I'll see you in my next one. Take care, and remember, your financial story is still being written.